See TV 18.
Back home, here are some thoughts on the ongoing reform agenda, the priority list of the government now, and also the intent on lowering fiscal deficit. Here's the Prime Minister speaking this morning.
I stand before you to reassure you that our government is committed to doing everything that is possible to allay, to alter the policy environment, to accelerate economic growth, and to make the growth process socially and regionally more inclusive. The steps we have taken recently are only the beginning of a process to revive our economy and take it back to the trend growth rate of 8 to 9%. We need to complete the exercise that was begun on GAR and taxation of the IT sectors. The direct tax code and the goods and services tax bills are high on our priority. Last year, the central government's fiscal deficit touched a high of 5.9% of our GDP. This was clearly unsustainable. The finance minister has come out with a roadmap to reduce it to 5.3% this year and to 3% by 2016-17. Our government is serious about moving in that direction.
The Prime Minister reiterating that the government remains committed to growth. Well, with that, we'll wrap up this quick news update, but stay tuned, more programming right here on CBC TV 18.
Welcome back. Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh today said that the government will speed up stake sale process in public sector enterprises to help revive equity markets. Addressing the 85th Annual General Meeting of Industry Association FICCI in the national capital, he called upon the private sector to support affirmative action and create employment opportunities to bring in inclusiveness to the growth story.
Corporate sector must own up its responsibility in supporting affirmative action designed to provide employment opportunities for the underprivileged sections, persons with disabilities, and our. The private sector should also play a more active role in the areas of research and development, education and skill development, health and rural development.
The Prime Minister's message to the corporate sector is very clear. The government is committed to change the investment sentiments by appropriate policy actions, but India Inc. must come forward to make the growth process socially and regionally more inclusive. The Prime Minister said that inflation rates in the last 2 years have risen to unacceptably high levels and need to be brought down to 5 to 6%. He assured corporate India that the government would try hard to bring down deficits and push a reform process to take the economy to a higher growth trajectory of 8 to 9%.
We will speed up the disinvestment process, which will also revive our equity markets. We are bringing greater clarity to the FDI policy in the pharma sector. The railways are working on a rail tariff authority, which will make fare setting a more rational exercise. We have already put in place the pact for reviving discoms contingent on better performance. The direct tax code and the goods and services tax bills are high on our priority.
Defending recent decisions about liberalizing FDI regime for a number of sectors, the Prime Minister said that each decision has sound economic logic and would help India insulate from persistent global slowdown. With bureau inputs,
to have you back with us on Business Day. We've got Raghuram Rajan, Chief Economic Advisor, talking at the FICCI AGM.
Progress to be desired. Simple metric of how we're doing is the World Bank's Doing Business report. While the methodology of such reports is not entirely without flaws, it does convey an alarming picture. In their report for 2013, India ranks 132nd amongst the ranked countries in the ease of doing business, and an alarming 173rd rank, dropping from last year's 169 on the ease of opening a business. It takes on average 12 procedures, 27 days, and a paid-in capital of 140% of GDP to start a business legitimately. By contrast, if you just look at our neighbors, in South Asia, it takes only 7 procedures, 19 days, and 18% of per capita GDP. So we're doing much worse than the rest of South Asia, let alone the world, in creating an environment where small and medium-sized businesses can start. And that, in some sense, is the route for equitable growth for us. It's not, some people argue that with all these regulations, we are achieving a sounder, safer system. We're not. We're not achieving a sounder, safer system. Instead, we're pushing more firms underground, condemning more of them to slow growth, and more labor into unsafe, unregulated, unprotected contract labor. Now, I'm not saying anything new. I'm not saying anything you haven't heard. In fact, there is a recent, very commendable report by FICCI entitled Empowering India, Redesigning Government-to-Business Relations, which has a similar thrust, as have a number of reports by the Planning Commission. I'm partly echoing the thinking that goes behind the national manufacturing policy. But we have to go beyond debate to action. And I would suggest 7 main ways we need to move forward to enable the entry of more firms and to encourage their growth. First, and obviously, we need better infrastructure. Infrastructure holds back a number of industries in India relative to the rest of the world. And we also need lower costs of acquiring the fundamentals of business, such as land. These problems especially hurt small businesses. For example, the absence of regular cheap power hurts a small business much more than it does a large business that can afford a captive generator. Similarly, the transaction costs of navigating the system of acquiring and regularizing land loom much larger for a small businesswoman who doesn't have the contacts and the lawyers that the large businessman has. So this is particularly important for small and medium-sized businesses. Second, we need to streamline the permissions and regulations that prevent small businesses from emerging. We have to ask, how many of these do we really need? And how can we make it easier for businesses to comply with the ones that remain? We need an ecosystem where every Kirana shop owner can dream of building his shop into a Carrefour or a Target. Third, we need to understand what aspects of labor legislation, if any, limits formal sector job creation. We have to move to better outcomes both for industry as well as for labor than what we currently have. This is not meant to imply that we need to curtail the rights of organized labor. It could well imply improving the rights of unorganized labor, but creating a win-win partnership with industry. Fourth, we need to improve access to finance for small and medium enterprise. Part of the answer must be small local banks that understand the problems of small business and are not held in check by a remote head office or bureaucratic rules and can grow along with their clients. This is one recommendation of my 2008 Committee on Financial Sector Reforms that I see till date very little take up on, but that I am passionate about. Fifth, we need a strong competition authority whose intent is not to favor one segment or the other, but to keep the playing field level. Sixth, we need better partnerships between large firms like yours and small firms so that they can benefit from your expertise and your ability to open new markets for them. We need private-private partnerships in addition to the much-touted private-public partnerships. Seventh, we need an easier process of exit where the claims of workers and financials are quickly resolved and the assets of failed firms are put to better use. Small firms do die at a faster rate than large firms, and if the system prevents death, we have hordes of the living dead that clog up the system. My colleagues in government speak of industrial parks full of empty plots that are occupied by defunct firms whose assets are locked up because they cannot expire and the system will not allow them death. For a so short country, this is unacceptable. In sum, India has to be more open to business if we are to do social justice to our people. Note that I have not suggested special privileges based on size, such as small-scale reservations or interest subventions. These kinds of privileges tend to make growth unattractive, tend to make staying small much more attractive. We don't want small firms to be satisfied with being small. We want them to constantly thrive to become large. So that summarizes what I wanted to lay before you as possible speculative thoughts. I've given you a sense of what I think we need to do. Some of these actions are within the purview of the central government. Some are within the purview of state governments. In fact, if we took the best practices of state governments vis-à-vis business on all the issues listed above and put them together, we would have a very hospitable business environment. So for anyone who says this can't be done in India, it is being done somewhere in India. And we have to understand how to put it all together. So my request to all of you at FICCI is the following. Internalize the report that you put out and push us, the government, to improve the ease of doing business. In the years to come, that, more than anything else, will set us on the path towards strong, sustainable, and equitable growth for all the citizens of this country. Thank you.
All right, that was Raghuram Rajan just outlining some of the features that can help and boost entrepreneurial enterprise in India. But let's move on then, and now what could be a breather of sorts? Inflation has just begun to ease, but price rise in core segments like food items and fuel still remains sticky at high levels. So while policymakers welcome the decision, a rate cut from the central bank remains a distant dream.
Also speaking at an event in Delhi on Saturday, the Prime Minister too said that DTC GST are high on government's priority list.
The direct tax code and the goods and services tax bills are high on our priority. The government is rolling out Aadhaar-based services rapidly so that benefits like scholarships for students, pensions for the aged, health benefits, Manrega wages, and many other benefits are transferred directly into bank accounts using Aadhaar as a bridge. This will reduce leakages, cut down corruption, eliminate middlemen, target beneficiaries better, and speed up transfer of benefits to eligible individuals. The inflation rates in the last 2 years have also increased to unacceptably high levels and need to be brought down to no more than 5 to 6% per annum.
Inflation needs to be brought down to 5 to 6%. In fact, this week itself was packed with all the action on the economy's front. On Wednesday,
आर्थिक सुधारों पर सरकार ने तेजी बरकरार रखने का जताया इरादा। प्रधानमंत्री ने कहा तेज करेंगे विनिवेश की प्रक्रिया। बेहिसाब महंगाई को लेकर सरकार ने एक बार फिर से जताई चिंता। पीएम ने कहा महंगाई दर 5 से 6% के दायरे में लाने की जरूरत। पीएम ने विपक्ष को भी लिया आड़े हाथों, कहा वैश्विक हालात को विपक्ष कर रहा है नजरअंदाज।
शुक्रिया इस पूरी जानकारी के लिए लक्ष्मण। प्रधानमंत्री ने सब्सिडी बिल पर फिक्र जताई है। उन्होंने कहा है कि भारी भरकम सब्सिडी के चलते वित्तीय घाटा कम करना मुश्किल हो रहा है, इसलिए सब्सिडी घटाना जरूरी है। खासकर पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट पर दी जाने वाली सब्सिडी का बोझ सबसे ज्यादा है। प्रधानमंत्री आज इंडस्ट्री चेंबर फिक्की की एजीएम में शामिल होने पहुंचे थे।
The subsidies on oil alone are more than what the government spends on health and education put together. We need to address these issues even as we ensure that the poor and the vulnerable are effectively protected. Last year, the central government's fiscal deficit touched a high of 5.9% of our GDP. This was clearly unsustainable. The finance minister has come out with a roadmap to reduce it to 5.3% this year.
इधर इंडस्ट्री ने एक बार फिर से सरकार को याद दिलाया है कि ग्रोथ के रास्ते पर बने रहने के लिए जरूरी है कि सरकार रिफॉर्म जारी रखे। फिक्की की नई प्रेसिडेंट नैनालाल किदवई ने कहा कि सरकार ने जिस तरह से विपक्षी पार्टियों के विरोध के बावजूद रिफॉर्म के कदम उठाए हैं, उससे इंडस्ट्री में भरोसा बना है। उन्होंने उम्मीद जताई कि सरकार ये प्रक्रिया आगे भी जारी रखेगी।
The reform measures announced so far have given a boost to corporate India's confidence level and, of course, our stock markets. These have also raised expectations for continuation of this process. We are confident that this burst of reforms will be followed through to ensure that we move on to a high and sustainable growth path.
इधर कैबिनेट के ताजा जमीन अधिग्रहण बिल को लेकर इंडस्ट्री थोड़ी सी चिंतित है। फिक्की के पूर्व प्रेसिडेंट आरवी कनौरिया का कहना है कि इस बिल को मौजूदा शक्ल में संसद के सामने नहीं रखा जाना चाहिए। उनका कहना है कि ये बिल खेती कर रहे किसानों को नए मौके देने से रोक रहा है।
The land acquisition bill in its present form would stop the gradual shift in labor force from agriculture to industry and services. Do we want to impoverish agriculture labor by denying them opportunities? There is an inherent contradiction with the country's objective of becoming a developed economy. The bill should not be passed in its present form and the full implications of the bill be comprehensively reviewed.
But we must be careful that there is a balance between the interests of the landowners and infrastructure and industrial development. And we feel that provision that unless 80% of the landowners agree, the government won't go ahead and acquire is a bit too high. It should have been, in our opinion, around 60%.
फिक्की की 50वीं वार्षिक बैठक में पहुंचे प्रधानमंत्री, कहा भारतीय अर्थव्यवस्था पर भी हुआ ग्लोबल मंदी का असर।
फिक्की के सम्मेलन में प्रधानमंत्री मनमोहन सिंह ने माना भारत में पिछले 2 साल में बड़ी महंगाई।
प्रधानमंत्री ने कहा पूरी दुनिया में रही मंदी, लेकिन भारत ने किया मंदी का सामना।
प्रधानमंत्री मनमोहन सिंह ने कहा सरकार विकास की रफ्तार और तेज करेगी, निवेश बढ़ाने के लिए कदम उठाए।
दिल्ली में प्रधानमंत्री ने एफडीआई पर विरोध करने वाली पार्टियों पर जमकर निशाना साधा। उन्होंने कहा कि एफडीआई का विरोध करने वाले लोग दुनिया की हकीकत से अनजान हैं। फिक्की में हुए कार्यक्रम में प्रधानमंत्री डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह ने कहा कि बीते 2 साल में देश में महंगाई बढ़ी है। सरकार हर संभव कदम उठाने के लिए वचनबद्ध है, जिससे आर्थिक वृद्धि की तरफ देश बढ़ सके।
Our action in correcting distortions in energy pricing, reducing diesel and LPG subsidies was aimed to achieve this objective. As challenging as the fiscal deficit has been, the rising current account deficit in the balance of payments. Given the global environment, investors have become risk averse and global trade has slowed down. To address this challenge, we have liberalized our policy on foreign direct investment. Our decision on foreign direct investment in multi-brand retail, in civil aviation, in power trading exchanges and broadcasting must also be viewed in this larger context.
जो हमारे अर्थशास्त्रियों की सरकार ने जो देश को मंदी दी है, वो मंदी जो है वो आर्थिक नाकेबंदी में बदल गई है। इस तरह की मंदी, जो मंदी की आज देश को परेशान कर रही है, वो आर्थिक नाकेबंदी का स्वरूप ले चुकी है। अगर आप देखें तो आज देश जो है वो गरीबी के, बेरोजगारी के, महंगाई के पायदान पर सबसे ऊपर हो गया है और तरक्की के पायदान पर सबसे नीचे आ गया है। ये अपने आप में बहुत चिंता की बात है और प्रधानमंत्री जी और कांग्रेस पार्टी अगर इसके बावजूद भी अपनी पीठ थपथपा करके और आज भी कहे कि हमारा जो है वो आर्थिक उदारवाद और हम जो करने वाले हैं उससे देश चमक जाएगा, तो 8.5 सालों से तो देश में की चमक कमजोर हो गई। देश में जो है फीकापन आ गया, महंगाई का फीकापन आ गया, बेरोजगारी का फीकापन आ गया, गरीबी का फीकापन आ गया। तो अब अभी आप जो है वो जाते जाते आप क्या बहुत बड़ा कमाल करेंगे पता नहीं, लेकिन इतना जरूर है कि देश जो है वो आज ये मंदी के बाद जो है वो आर्थिक नाकेबंदी की रास्ते पे खड़ा हो गया।
और प्रधानमंत्री के इस बयान पर पश्चिम बंगाल के मुख्यमंत्री ममता बनर्जी ने कुछ इस अंदाज में चुटकी ली।
नमस्कार, आप सभी का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। मैं हूं पीयूष श्रीवास्तव। सबसे पहले बात अर्थव्यवस्था की। अर्थव्यवस्था की सेहत को लेकर प्रधानमंत्री से लेकर सरकार का एक एक मंत्री इस वक्त चिंतित है। प्रधानमंत्री डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह ने कहा है कि 8 से 9% ग्रोथ हासिल करने के लिए सरकार हर संभव कदम उठा रही है। हालांकि उन्होंने महंगाई पर एक बार फिर से सिर्फ और सिर्फ चिंता व्यक्त की है। आर्थिक रिफॉर्म के मोर्चे पर कड़े फैसलों के बाद सरकार का भरोसा 7वें आसमान पर पहुंच गया है। उद्योग संगठन फिक्की की एक जून में शिरकत करने पहुंचे प्रधानमंत्री को दुनिया भर में छाई मंदी के बावजूद भरोसा है कि भारतीय अर्थव्यवस्था जल्द ही पटरी पर लौट आएगी और ग्रोथ को तेजी से पंख लगेंगे।
Economic growth and to make the growth process socially and regionally more inclusive.
सरकार के लिए महंगाई अभी भी परेशानी का सबब बना हुआ है। हालांकि प्रधानमंत्री ने भरोसा जताया है कि जल्द ही महंगाई दर 5% के करीब लाई जाएगी।
The inflation rates in the last 2 years have also increased to unacceptably high levels and need to be brought down to no more than 5 to 6% per annum.
प्रधानमंत्री डायरेक्ट कैश सब्सिडी के बहाने सरकार का जमकर दिखाई कर रहे हैं। प्रधानमंत्री ने कहा कि डायरेक्ट कैश सब्सिडी से जरूरतमंदों को फायदा पहुंचेगा।
The government is rolling out Aadhaar-based services rapidly so that benefits like scholarships for students, pensions for the aged, health benefits, Manrega wages and many other benefits are transferred directly into bank accounts using Aadhaar as a bridge.
आर्थिक सुधारों में सुस्ती पर दुनिया भर में आलोचना के बाद सरकार ने जिस तरह कई बड़े फैसले किए हैं, उससे साफ संकेत है कि आगे भी ये प्रक्रिया जारी रहेगी। ब्यूरो रिपोर्ट, जी बिजनेस।
है इस वक्त की बड़ी खबर। चलते हैं सीधा रुक करते हैं फिक्की में चल रहे एजीएम जहां पर प्रधानमंत्री इस समय एड्रेस कर रहे हैं एजीएम को।
It is almost 5 years since I was here in this building for a similar annual event. These have been 5 challenging years for us in India, and if I may say so, for the world economy as a whole. In 2008, the Indian economy had experienced 5 years of unprecedented growth, registering an annual growth rate of close to 9% per annum. There was, therefore, an air of reassuring optimism all around, and many were celebrating the rise of India. But few months later, most countries were affected by the global economic downturn. We weathered the impact of the transatlantic financial crisis reasonably well. India was held up as an example of responsible and responsive economic management. But with time, the global slowdown took its toll, and we too have been impacted. Today, we meet after a year or two of excessive pessimism at home, which in turn has hurt the growth process. But I stand before you to reassure you that our government is committed to doing everything that is possible to relieve, to alter the policy environment, to accelerate economic growth, and to make the growth process socially and regionally more inclusive. The global economy is still passing through turbulent times. The economic situation in Europe has been a source of concern for quite some time. The US is not completely out of the woods. China too is witnessing a slowdown. There is considerable uncertainty about when the global economic situation will improve. However, as you have seen in these past few weeks, our government has acted to reverse the cycle of negative expectations and stimulate investment. I wish to utilize this occasion to outline 3 broad themes. First, to underline the importance of accelerated economic growth and making the growth process socially and regionally more inclusive. Second, to draw your attention to the measures that we have already taken towards this end. And finally, outline steps we still need to and we intend to take. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been able to accelerate the pace of economic growth over the last decade with an average growth rate of over 8%. Even now, we are the second fastest growing large economy in the world. Our per capita levels have reached a point where India is social and regional inequalities that continue to exist in our country. Disparities in income and wealth cannot be eliminated overnight or in the short run, but disparities of the kind we have in India, even in terms of access to basic facilities such as health, education, safe drinking water, electricity, rural infrastructure, and even banking is something that the nation can ill afford. The inflation rates in the last 2 years have also increased to unacceptably high levels and need to be brought down to no more than 5 to 6% per annum. The years of high growth enabled us to generate resources that have been deployed to improve the well-being of our people. But we need to do more to eradicate poverty, ignorance and disease from this blessed land of ours. We need to have a growth process which is socially and regionally far more inclusive than what we have today. That is also essential for the long-term stability of our polity and our society. Well-being, the social base of development, not only improves well-being but also widens the whole market for business. Thus, equitable growth can by itself generate more growth. A more educated and healthier workforce is more productive. Better rural infrastructure integrates the rural economy far more effectively into the larger national economy. A healthy agricultural economy facilitates faster growth of industry. A more prosperous and better connected population is the source of larger demand and markets for goods and services. This is why our government has committed large resources to social and human capital development, in education, in healthcare, in rural development, in housing, and in rural infrastructure. It is our endeavor to ensure that all marginalized groups and regions join the dynamic growth process in the mainstream economy. Despite the challenges we continue to face, we must recognize that poverty has declined at a pace never seen in the past 200 years. More effective social safety nets are falling in place. People look forward to a brighter future for themselves and their children. It is in this context that we should see the major drive we have launched recently towards direct cash transfers. The drive is to transfer government benefits directly to the bank accounts of individual beneficiaries. The unique identification program of having Aadhaar numbers for all residents is going to be the basis of this huge transformation. The government is rolling out Aadhaar-based services rapidly
उनका मानना है कि आधार कार्ड से काफी फायदा होगा, जिससे कि डायरेक्टली जो बैंक अकाउंट्स है, जो एलिजिबल लोग हैं, उनके बैंक अकाउंट्स में पैसा जाएगा और इससे करप्शन को रोकने में मदद मिलेगी। साथ ही उन्होंने कहा कि जो ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी जो स्लो डाउन है पूरे ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी का, खासकर यूरोप में जो क्राइसिस चल रहा है, इसका असर पूरे हर जगह पड़ रहा है। तो आज अर्थव्यवस्था पर प्रधानमंत्री फिलहाल एड्रेस कर रहे हैं जो उनको फिक्की में। हम आपको लगातार इस पर अपडेट्स